This is video number 1 for 2-point linear perspective. We're going to draw in bird's eye view today. So the very first step is to make sure your ruler is lined up to the edge of the paper. And what you're going to do is draw your horizon line. This is a space where your buildings or your objects go back. Then what you want to do, we're in 2-point linear perspective. So you're going to draw vanishing point number 1 and vanishing point number 2. The two vanishing points in the horizon line do not have to be positioned where I place them. However, after demonstrating the method of linear perspective as many times as I have over the course of 10 years, I feel that this is the best place to put them when you are learning how to do linear perspective. You can move them around once you feel comfortable with what you're doing. So the very first step after you have your horizon line and your vanishing points is to make sure, once again, your ruler is lined up to the edge of your paper. And you do a vertical line here. I like to put my first initial vertical line, which is what I call it, the initial vertical line. It's the very first one. I like to leave enough space here where there's enough depth. So right here, I usually go above and below by about an inch or an inch and a half from my horizon line, no matter what it is that I'm drawing. I try really hard to make sure that I'm not really close to it, because then there's not enough depth, right? So step number 1, vertical line. Step number 2 is I take the top back to number 1 and I take the bottom of the line back to number 1. I take the top back to number 2 and I take the bottom back to number 2. So then what I have, it looks like a book maybe, or it looks like a V. So then what I want to do is I want to go, okay, here's the initial stage of my building or my shape. This is the corner of it. So now I want to decide, I'm the architect, how big or small are the sides of my building going to be? So I take my ruler and I go up against my initial vertical line. I scoot over to the left, and right now I'm deciding, I think, I'll go right here. Why not? And then over on this side, I can make it shorter if I want to. So maybe I'll do that. Maybe this will be where you see more of the left side of the building. Okay, and then what I like to do, I get rid of my receding lines that I don't need once I'm at this stage, because otherwise it's just a lot of line work, and I like everything to be nice and clean, and you can kind of see what you're doing step by step from there. So I don't need the remnants of those lines anymore. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take corner number 1, and the reason why I'm calling it that is because this is my initial vertical line here. This is what started everything. This is vanishing point 1, vanishing point 2. So for me, everything on the left side of the initial vertical line is side 1, corners 1, etc. Everything on the right side of the initial vertical line here is something that I just call number 2, side 2. And just makes it a little bit easier for clarity. So I'm going to take the top over here from side 1, and I'm going to go over to side 2 for my roof. And then I'm going to take side 2 and I'm going to go over to side 1. I'm actually not going to draw all the way to the vanishing point because I already have that first line right here. So I know where to stop, right? So there you go. So there is my first shape. And if I'm just trying to draw shapes and learn how to do this, then I'm actually already done. So that is shape number 1. Using bird's eye view, which means if there are birds flying up here, they're looking down at the top of the building, okay? So if I were to go ahead and I want to do another shape and I want to have it overlap, what I could do and what I could have done is I could have left these lines here. So let me just go back in and kind of reiterate those a little bit. Okay. Let's say I want to have another building right here to the right and it's overlapping. I'm going to repeat this vertical line. I'm going to scoot it over. And then I'm going to repeat it again over here. Maybe I'll do 2 more buildings. I'll do another space and another space, right? So I have the space in between the buildings, which is more narrow, and then I have the buildings here. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all the corners back to number 1. I drew in the receding space of side 2. So now I want to take this corner and go back. I'm going to take this corner and go back. I'm going to take this corner and go back. This corner. So are we catching on? All the corners, all the corners go back, right? Okay. And then what I want to do is take this line and go again from the corner like we had it in the first place. And I'm going to just go right here. So I can turn this into all sorts of things that are magical and Tetris and etc. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to keep it simple for our first demo video on 2 Point. And I'm going to get rid of the excess lines that we don't need, okay? And I'm going to go in between the buildings right here. Going in between. I'm going to go in between right here and right here. This is already done for me down here, okay? And what I need to do right here is repeat this. Vertical, vertical, vertical. So now I have 3 shapes that have form. They started out as just a line, right? Just as a vertical line. I can get rid of this. And I can also get rid of these 2 lines here if I'm just gonna have floating objects. I could keep this receding line and do another one right here, and I can turn that into a sidewalk or a river if I want to do that. I'm going to show you how to do sidewalks and rivers in, I would say, probably video number 4 or 5 for 2 Point linear perspective. Our next video is going to be on 2 Point linear perspective in worm's eye view, and we're also going to do a video on eye level. We're also going to be doing cutouts and awnings, overlapping, and lettering.